So are you kind of on the fence about what character you want to play? Maybe on one hand, you're wanting to play a Great Old Ones Warlock, but you're just not into the patron thing. I mean, who wants to bring another boss into their life in D&D? And on the other hand, maybe you want to play a full caster because who wants the whole problem of waiting for short rest to get your spells back with pack magic? You want to be a full caster, but you want the cool things in Great Old Ones. Well, what if I told you that there was a character class that not only puts both of those together, but takes all of that up high-end casting that the Great Old Ones Warlock can do, and then puts it all to shame? You'd be interested? Well, you're in luck, because behind today's secret door, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer test drive. So behind today's secret door, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer test drive. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons and Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. Alright, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed. And many thanks to Marcelo, Doug, and Jamie for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. All right, so a couple of quick notes. As this is a test drive, you are going to want to check the pinned comment. There may be some things that I wanted to say that didn't quite make the edit. I might have forgotten to say them as I'm sitting down to shoot the video, or there could be a mistake or an oversight on my part. That does happen, and those will all be noted in the pinned comment. In addition, this test drive is going to really focus on one specific mechanic that this class offers, and that mechanic really starts at level 6. So if you're really interested in the mechanic, and that's what your appeal is, the timestamp for when I start talking about level 6 will also be in the pinned comment. All right, so a test drive is exactly what it sounds like. It's your chance to see how a class will play level by level. I will take you from levels 1 through level 10. I'm going to be giving you what I think are the best choices, the optimal choices in general for this particular class. So in that respect, it's kind of buildish and it's kind of guide-ish. It's a test drive. It's your chance to see how a class will play, because it's pretty hard sometimes to get a really accurate feel of how a class will play when you just read it from the book, or even if you do watch a video and watch a build video in particular. How it's going to feel to play that class is kind of hard to get your hands around, and that's what a test drive is designed to do. So in general, the test drives have gone from the buildish side. They're generally more buildish than they are guide-ish, and the last few have been far more guide-ish than buildish. This one's probably right down the middle. It's a good amount of build, but it's awfully guide-ish because, as I said earlier, the mechanic is really what I'm interested in. Not only does it interest me, but it should interest you. And when this class came out, and I did my first Aberrant Mind video way back when Tasha's had just come out, I don't really watch other YouTube videos of other D&D YouTubers, but after I did the Aberrant Mind and published it, I did watch a few of the other bigger name YouTubers that were out there just to see what they had talked about, and I was pretty shocked that a lot of them seemed to miss the real power of the Aberrant Mind. In fact, I don't think any of them talked about at length what I'm going to talk to you about. Now, that was 4 years ago, and information travels around, so I'm sure that a lot of you may have heard this kind of thing already by now, but at the time when we did the video way back when, it was kind of breaking news. Now, the Aberrant Mind has suffered a bit of a nerf from where it was in Tasha's, but I have found that as I've gone through it in my head, what it means is that the class is not going to be as uber powerful as it was, but it's still awfully powerful, and you're going to be able to cast like a crazy person. Now, as far as role-playing ideas go here, when the class had come out before, there was the option of swapping spells out. And so I opted for trying to make a pure psionic character, because it's my belief that the Aberrant Mind is a very stealth way of creating a true psionicist from, and I'm talking about way back in like AD&D days. The psionicist wasn't in original AD&D, not second edition. In original AD&D, there was no psionicist, but there was psionics. And how psionics operated, when we get to level 6, operates almost precisely in the most important way as the Aberrant Mind does. So it was very important to me to try and honor that and think about it from a standpoint of psionics, as opposed to a lot of the flavor that they threw into the Aberrant Mind, and I'm still not really sure why. So what I think that they did was give a class that, if you were inclined to want to play a Great Old Ones Warlock, well, you could play an Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, and we're going to throw a whole bunch of Eldritch kind of spells in there. And you will see that it does have the potential to operate from a Pact Magic standpoint almost identically to Pact Magic, except without the need to wait on anything. You'll have all the power that you want right in your hands, right from as soon as you get up from your long rest. So from a role-playing standpoint now, because that option has been removed and you can't swap spells in and out, you do now have these Eldritch spells, and you're going to be using them. So with that in mind, I think that it's important that you want to try and incorporate that somehow into what your role-playing concept for the character is. Now, what I'm going to suggest is that the Eldritch things, this is how I would approach it. I still want it to be a psionic character, but this is now kind of like me morphing it into a Lovecraftian look. If your character has a dark side, let's just say, maybe they have access to a kind of madness that most people don't have. Well, what I would think some of these of the Eldritch spells could be is your psionic manifestation of that particular insanity, or that horror, or that thing that lurks in your own mind that you're able to project out psionically, and it takes a physical form. So if you were to summon something, let's just say, that thing wouldn't necessarily be the spirit thing that they described it. You're reflavoring it as it is a psionic, a telekinetic construct that's coming from your own mind. It could be kind of Green Lantern-y in that particular way. That's another way you could make it. If you wanted to play a fear lantern, a yellow lantern kind of a character, the Aberrant Mind could do that rather easily. You're not going to hit the full flower of this character until level 6. Now, in the old rule set, I had you not really hitting full flower until 9th level because of the nature of everything. It just things got kind of delayed. But here you are going to be about as good as you're going to get on that front at level 6. Things will get better. But and not level 9 is the level where you're really going to blow up some, but you're not blowing up quite as much as you were in 2014. But nevertheless, it's going to be very effective and a lot of fun. And one of the things that I like about this now is that you are using spells, you're almost forced into using spells that are, in the cases, the ones that I'm going to recommend, are good, but probably wouldn't make the cut otherwise. That wouldn't make my cut in terms of recommending them to you. And that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're not as great as some of the other options that level might offer. But it's kind of fun to be using spells that you're just not seeing other characters use. Okay, now for your race, I'm going to recommend 3 races here. I'm going to say human, of course, and if you go with human, you want to take alert, and you want to take magic initiate, and you want to take find familiar just for the general use of it and its ability to interact with alert. Now, I have all these 3 race choices taking alert as their origin feat. You could go with an elf. Now, the subtype doesn't matter that much. I would probably go high elf, but you could certainly go with either of the other 2. All 3 of them have their advantages, so it just depends on what you really want to do. And the other would be to go with a gnome. And again, whichever variation, it doesn't really matter because you're really taking it for the ability to gain advantage on all of your mental saving throws. So because the sorcerer gets proficiency in Constitution and Charisma, that means that 2 of your big 3 saves, Wisdom, Constitution, and Dexterity, 2 of the big 3 are covered, and rather well. So that would mean that you've got proficiency in Con, which is plenty good, and just about every full caster would love to have that. But you're also gaining not only proficiency in Charisma, but you are getting proficiency and advantage on Charisma. So you're making all those. Charisma is number 4 out of the 3, I would say. It's the most common after the big 3, I would say. But it's not to say that it's even remotely as close as common as the big 3 are. So you won't have anything for Dex. There's not much I can tell you about that except, we're going to give you a decent Dex. So with all that in mind, all that really matters here is that you take a 15 and put it into Charisma, and you're going to put the +2 into Charisma for a 17. After that, I would personally want to get to 2 14s in both Dexterity and Constitution. And then whatever you want to dump, you can dump at that point. You can certainly dump Strength. You can dump Intelligence without any problem at all. You don't need Strength and you don't need Intelligence. All right. So at level 1, of course, we get Spellcasting and we get Innate Sorcery. Now with Spellcasting, we're only going to get 2 prepared spells, and I'm going to suggest that you take the 2 best ones, which are Shield and Sleep. The spell selection that I'm going to give you is not going to be terribly surprising. Now, with Innate Sorcery, when you use a bonus action, you're going to get a +1 to your save DCs, and you're going to get advantage on your attack rolls with your Sorcerer spells. So you can use this ability twice in a day, and you get your uses back when you finish a long rest. So in general, I assume that you're going to have about 3 encounters a day on average, each lasting about 4 rounds. So I would necessarily want to save Innate Sorcery for when you're seeing a big encounter happen. The question I would ask myself is, do I need Innate Sorcery here? If the answer is no, then don't use it. Now, I'm not saying just hoard them and hold on to them. By all means, use them, but just don't use them willy-nilly. You've only got 2. Shield is, of course, one of the premier defensive spells in the game, and Sleep is actually now even better than it was in 2014 in one very important sense, and it's also worse than it was in 2014. In 2014, it didn't have a saving throw, but it was extremely limited in its lifespan because it affected a total amount of hit points. But that ability to just knock somebody down, knock them out without them getting a save at all was amazing. Now they do get a save, and you get a very tiny area of effect, and they do get a save, but that save, they actually will end up getting 2. But because of that, Sleep is now going to be effective and possible to be useful all the way through your entire career. It's a little bit better than Tasha's in the sense of how the saving throws are structured, and also how the fact that it has obviously a very small area of effect, about as small as it can get, 4 squares, but it does have an area of effect. Tasha's advantage is that if you were to upcast Tasha's, you're going to be able to hit multiple targets that could be anywhere within range. That would allow you to cherry pick targets, but we're not worried about Tasha's here, obviously, anyway. So Sleep and Shield, and you are doing pretty well, but you do only have those 2 slots, so you got to make them count. Here at level 1, I would not even be even thinking of using Shield. I would be using Sleep, of course. And at level 2, we're getting Font of Magic and Metamagic. I'm going to be very honest with you here. I'm not really worried about your Metamagic, and you're going to see why. I'm going to recommend what I would recommend that you take, but you could take whatever really appeals to you, you could take. But I am going to tell you that of all the sorcerers, the Aberrant Mind sorcerer uses their sorcery points differently and more effectively and more brutally than Metamagic really generally can do. That doesn't mean you never use Metamagic. My point is that you're not going to be using it nearly as often. You're going to use it for things where you really need to throw a little bit extra on that fastball. That's when you're going to use Metamagic. And you'll see why when we hit level 6. So one of the Metamagics that I am going to recommend here is Extended Spell. Extended Spell is particularly good for the Aberrant Mind because a lot of the spells that you're going to be taking are concentration, which have a duration. And in some of these cases, the duration that you might want to take, as you'll see at level 6, there's an economy with this character in their sorcery points and how they play out, that if you can economize even further, that also translates into more power. And by more power, I mean directly casting more. So if by Extended Spell, you could get a spell to last longer that you would generally have to cast twice, but can make it cost less than that, then that's going to free up whatever amount of sorcery points that would be to use for another spell or for another Metamagic option. In addition, it's also granting advantage on your saving throws for concentration spells. Now, I'm not going to say that I would always be casting Extend Spell with my concentration spells. Remember, you have proficiency in your Constitution saving throws anyway. But if you really wanted to make sure that you really protected that spell, Extend Spell is not only great for what I talked about just a minute ago, but it's also a relatively cheap way of being able to make sure that you lock down that saving throw. Now, it's not a very exciting Metamagic option, of course, and it depends on how you want to play. And what I'm describing to you, I think Extend Spell is a really solid choice. Another strangely good choice for this, and this kind of, it's more of a role-playing kind of an option here. But if you were wanting to really go with the idea that everything is psychic, then you might want to go with Subtle Spell. Now, Subtle Spell in general is a good Metamagic, but for you, it's also got that extra bonus that it's all coming from here. So while you would think that that might be a dumb Metamagic to take, it actually isn't, because in the times, I should say, when you are going to be casting a non-psionic spell, and we'll get there at level 3, when you are casting a non-psionic spell, if you wanted to give it the appearance and the feel that it is psionic, then you could use Subtle, and it also obviously gains all the benefits that nobody knows you're casting, can't counter it, etc., etc., etc. Now, there is an argument to be made here for taking Quicken. That's up to you. I'm not going to recommend it. If I had to recommend 2, I would probably go with Extended and Subtle. But that being said, I am a fan of Twinned in general, but I also don't see a lot of spells here. There's a couple that Twinned is necessarily going to really benefit from. And like I said before, I'm really worried about what's on that psionic spell list the most. Now, here at level 2, we also get 2 more spells, and I'm going to make another kind of weird recommendation, and that is that you have 2 rituals sitting on the level 1 spell list. You could certainly take them both. It's Detect Magic and Comprehend Language, and they're both premier level 1 rituals. So I would be inclined to take them both because it's going to just expand your envelope. You're going to be casting like crazy, but now you'll also have the ability to be able to just reach out and have even more influence. The ability to comprehend languages also kind of just fits with the whole psionic idea anyway. So that would be my recommendation. But if you were looking for maybe you're looking for 2 combat options, or maybe you would just like 1. Detect Magic is of the 2, which would you ditch of the rituals. Detect Magic, probably somebody else has it. If you went with Elf, you don't take Detect Magic. That's the reason to go. I'm sorry. If you went with High Elf, the High Elf will get Detect Magic. So you don't have to even take that here. That's one of the advantages of going with High Elf. So in that particular case, you would just grab Comprehend Languages and then whatever other combat option you want. If you're looking for damage, the 2 best choices are probably going to be the AoEs that I don't particularly like all that much, Burning Hands or Thunderwave. I don't like them because I don't want you getting close. But in general, I would recommend getting Detect Magic and Comprehend Languages. Like I said, they're both going to be used all the time in D&D. It is a question, though. It depends on what your party composition is. You may or may not really need them all that much, but boy, it sure is nice to be able to have it yourself. Now, with Font of Magic, of course, that is your sorcery points. You're going to get a sorcery point per level. So you're starting here with 2 sorcery points. And with Metamagic, you get 2, and you're going to get 2 more at 10th level. Now, of course, and this is actually a rather important mechanic that we need to make sure everyone understands, that with Font of Magic, you're also going to be able to create spell slots or create sorcery points from spell slots. So if you sacrifice a spell slot to gain sorcery points, which is going to be something we're going to be worried about an awful lot here, you get the spell's level in sorcery points. And then if you wanted to buy a spell slot, you can. A level 1 spell slot costs 2, a level 2 costs 3, a level 3 costs 5, a level 4, 6, a level 5 is 7. But it's very important to note that you can sacrifice your spell slots to gain sorcery points. And at level 3, an atomic level, you get the Aberrant Mind feature. Now, this is also something I just want to take a quick pause and ask yourself now. With the old Sorcerer, it was great because you were psychic right from the day you were born, so now you're starting at level 1 and you're an Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. Now everything's been pushed back to level 3, so you should have a good role-playing idea as to why this is happening now. So if you were going with the idea that it's this innate psychic ability, it could be maybe that it was latent and it was just waiting to come out and then it comes out. Maybe there's a traumatic event that happens. Maybe you could talk to your DM about having something really wacko happen to you at level 3 or something kind of whatever it is, whether it's, outlandish or horrific or whatever. You could talk to your DM about that. And then it's that event that triggers and unlocks that ability. So just a quick role-playing point. So with the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, we get our psionic spell list. Now, the psionic spell list you're going to get right now, your first level spells are Arms of Hadar and Dissonant Whispers. And your second level spells are Calm Emotions and Detect Thoughts. And your cantrip that you get is Mind Sliver. So you get all that here at level 3. That's 5 new spells. And of course, you get your second level spells and you're getting 2 more spells for that. So you're getting the bump that you're getting here at level 3 is rather ridiculous. And I mean, at level 2, you got another spell slot. So you had 3 first level spell slots. So that was great. But now you're looking at it here and you're getting 2 more you're getting 2 second level spell slots. And you're getting your 4th first level slot. So you're getting 3 castings a day in addition to all the rest of that spells known. So it's a huge jump. And of course, the spells are more powerful now. Now, what Aberrant Mind also gives you is telepathic speech. So with telepathic speech, you're going to be able to, as a bonus action, you're going to be able to establish a bond with another creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. Once that bond is established, you can communicate back and forth with each other telepathically, but you must have a language that you both understand. Now, you can be a number of miles away equal to your charisma modifier, which is crazy, but I'm going to point out some of the logistical problems with this whole thing, and you'll see. Because this bond only lasts for a number of minutes equal to your sorcerer level. So here at level 3, when you form a telepathic bond, it's going to last for 3 minutes. Now, let's just say that within that 3 minutes, and you have a 3 modifier for charisma, so it could be with somebody, you could continue to have that telepathic speech with someone up to 3 miles away, but to form the bond, they have to be within 30 feet of you that you can see. So they could take off and somehow be 3 miles away from you, and you could still talk, and that's all great and well. But once that 3 minutes is up, if they're not back, you can't reestablish it. Not until they're within 30 feet of you and you can see them. So even if you sent your familiar with them and they went out there and you looked through your familiar's eyes, it still wouldn't work unless your DM is going to maybe reasonably look at it and say that because you could be casting a spell through the familiar as a touch spell, that could count, but that, as far as I can see, is really a DM being just nice about it. So my point is there's just a logistical problem with how this works. So if you give it to a scout, if you're in a telepathic bond, a telepathic speech bond with a scout, and they're going up ahead, you're on the clock. Now, the nice thing is that there's no limitation to how many times a day you can use this. So while you are on the clock, you can just keep reestablishing it with other people. But this isn't a situation where you and your buddy can be talking from opposite ends of that mile radius area that you could be in all day long. That isn't how it's going to work. But in general, a really powerful ability, a great ability. Now, in talking about the psionic spells, because this is rather important, Arms of Hadar, okay, not a big fan. It's the first of your tentacle spells, but it's useful only if you're in a very bad situation. Now, that being said, and actually both of your first level spells are really this way, there are people out there that like Dissonant Whispers. It's okay. It's a good spell for get away from me. That's what I would use it for. The damage is Calm Emotions is a spell that in combat, because of how it's worded, I would love if it acted like Calm in Skyrim, where you make the party neutral, and as long as you're not hitting them in combat, they remain neutral to the combat. That would be an amazingly powerful spell, of course, and it doesn't work that way, and that's just too bad. Maybe I don't like Calm Emotions extra because of that, but it is objectively just not a very good spell in combat. But out of combat, that's a whole different thing. Here, out of combat, the ability to cast Calm Emotions when you're in a parlay situation, when you're in any kind of a tense situation where things are about to get bad, you could cast Calm Emotions, bring everything back down, and reset. Now, that's really powerful. Now, Detect Thoughts is a great utility spell in D&D. When you hit level 6, this is going to become a ridiculous option. But right now, it's good to have it in your pocket. When you use Detect Thoughts, there is a limitation to the fact that you're only gaining access to their surface thoughts. If you're wanting to pry information out of them, just ask the question that you're wanting to know the answer to. They can try and bury things as much as they want, but if you say, where's the painting? And it's going to be pretty rough for them to not have that bubble up to their surface thought to some degree, and you're going to get that information. Your ability to extract the truth out of and do it liberally, and again, once we get to level 6, you're going to wonder how you played D&D without this ability. In many respects, it will put a lot of social situations on almost easy mode. Actually operates in that sense very similarly, in my opinion, to how invisibility works. This and Suggestion, both of those spells are such that you are able to just break really big rules that you need broken in D&D on a routine basis. Now, for your second level spells, I'm going to suggest that you take Web, of course. Now, what the other spell is, I'm going to suggest that you take Invisibility or Suggestion. Obviously, Suggestion is going to be really, really thematic, and you should probably just take it. It's a great spell. But that being said, Invisibility is just very hard to beat. Either way, you're going to end up with both of them, because whatever you didn't take at this level, you're going to take at the next level. So it's which one do you want now? But you definitely take Web. Web is just, it's the best spell you've got at this point. Now, let me just comment on Mind Sliver here very quickly. I get a lot of people mentioning Mind Sliver in the comments section. I just want to address this because Mind Sliver is a logistical problem of a spell. So Mind Sliver, if it works, they get a D4 minus to their next saving throw, and they take a little bit of damage. But it's obviously that debuff to the saving throw, which is important. And look, that's great. Having a debuff to a saving throw, fantastic. But here's the problem. In round 1 is when in as early in round 1 as humanly possible is when you want to be casting your big spell. So what are we doing with Mind Sliver then? So if we're on round 2, are we casting Mind Sliver on round 1 to set up a round 2 casting of our big spell? I don't think so. So if you are then casting Mind Sliver, you're casting it on round 2, presumably, to set up your spell that you're going to now cast on round 3? It's a logistical problem of a spell. Now, all that can be solved with Quicken, of course, but that really depends on how much you want to be using Quicken. Now, there's going to be reasons to think about it with the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, to be sure, because of how much casting is going to be available to you. So the only reason I would be using it in later rounds is simply to set up some other effect that I know is going to happen on a saving throw from another party member or what have you. So if you do have a party member that's going after you in the initiative count, then using Mind Sliver as a use of an action after your big spells are out, sure. But what you're going to see is that you're going to be able to cast so much and with such potent spells that who's got time for Mind Sliver? Now, that could be the reason to take Quicken. But here's the problem I have with Quicken. It's 2 sorcery points, folks. So now let's think about Mind Sliver again. So what is Mind Sliver going to give you? It's going to give you a D4 potential debuff. That's great. It's also against a very, generally speaking, a very favorable saving throw in intelligence. Favorable to you, that is. But so let's say that they fail 60% of the time. So you're getting 60% of the value of 2.5, so you're getting 1.5 of, on average, of a debuff that you're having to spend 2 sorcery points to do. Is it worth 2 sorcery points, which could be used straight up in a more powerful way? My argument is, generally speaking, no, but not always no. There may be that time where you want every little, just to get the spell to land, you're going to want to do this as much as possible. But in generally speaking here, a lot of your spells are not dependent on one saving throw and everything's over. But in general, you have a lot of, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer has a lot of persistent spells. One of them doesn't even really give saving throws at all. Another, if they are in that same area of effect, they're going to take and have to keep making saving throws. And the big spell that you get towards the end of this, you're going to be just doing over and over and over again, and it's a persistent spell. I don't see the big need to make sure that the spell lands so hard for spending 2 sorcery points. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't be potentially very, very powerful in a given round. To me, Extend spell solves a lot of problems and feeds into the economy and the power, the wheelhouse of what this class does. And Subtle Spell speaks to the holistic role-playing side of playing this class. So that's why I'm recommending that. But Quickened is going to be an option for that. But Mind Sliver should really only be used otherwise if you have Quickened, or if you've simply got nothing else to do and you know that there's another saving throw coming down the line from another party member after you go in initiative. Okay, at 4th level, we get our ASI. Now, I'm going to give you what I think is probably the strongest combat pick that you should take, and that's going to be Telekinetic. Now, I had recommended Telepathic in the older version of this because there was actually more of a problem with bonus actions for the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer in the 2014 rules. That's cleared up a little bit now. Now, you've got Innate Sorcery as a bonus action in round 1 if you're going to use that. But after that, you're kind of okay. The problem is that if you're going to use Innate Sorcery, the big draw for Telekinetic, and this is where they do come at loggerheads, is let's say you cast Sleep. Now, Sleep has a 4 square area of effect. Let's say you had 2 people in that area of effect. It doesn't even really matter what the number is, but if you were able to shove somebody, you would be able to shove them into that area of effect that wouldn't be otherwise affected. That, of course, is going to make Sleep much more valuable. Now, in that case, I think I would just prefer to take the shove action and forget innate sorcery for this turn or this encounter for something like that, it is a round 1 decision. Now, you do have more persistent spells that you're going to be getting here at the very next level. And at level 7, you're going to have 2 persistent spells, both of which could really benefit from having the ability to shove them right back into that persistent area of effect problem. So in that sense, you could have innate sorcery working in tandem with making that save not only more difficult, but they're going to have to repeat it because you're going to be shoving them back into it with telekinetic. In addition, it's thematic, and in addition, you get an invisible mage hand, which is great. So my recommendation is going to be here for telekinetic, but my 1B would still be telepathic. And with telepathic, you're going to gain a casting of Detect Thoughts. You also know Detect Thoughts. Of course, you already do with Aberrant Mind, but you'll get a free casting of it, and that's very nice. But you're also going to have a persistent ability to have a telepathic channel with somebody else that you can broadcast to. This is just broadcast telepathy. It's not two-way telepathy. I've had people say that it's a waste because this is what I highly recommended in the Aberrant 2014, but it isn't. You have to have played, I think, with something like Message a lot to really realize just how useful, and I'm talking about Pathfinder Message actually, to realize just how useful that kind of an ability is to be able to broadcast to multiple player characters or whoever at once is really valuable. But it does have redundancies, just sort of like telekinetic is going to have with innate sorcery, in that you already have Detect Thoughts. Do you really need another casting of Detect Thoughts? It's true, but I'm talking about it for that secondary channel. It's more valuable than you think, and you should strongly consider it. But from a tactical standpoint, obviously telekinetic is going to be better. And because 2 of your key spells are going to be persistent, that's why I give the edge to telekinetic. And then the fact that the bonus action got eased up some here for the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. Another possibility is, of course, Warcaster, and another really good possibility is Inspiring Leader. Those 2 are further down on my list, and they're not thematic, so they're good, strong choices, but these are also 2 really good, strong choices, and they're thematic. You could even go for something like either Shadow Touched or Fey Touched. Those would be the next choices down the rung. I'm recommending telekinetic. Okay, now you get 2 more second level spells, and this is, of course, the big problem here, because you're going to take whatever you didn't take before. So you'll have now Web, Invisibility, and Suggestion. You're still in a real dilemma of a choice here, because you have Mirror Image, great spell, wonderful spell. Also kind of weirdly thematic, because you could be playing, these could be psionic duplicates, or you could just be creating that illusion in their mind. There's Misty Step. Now, if you went with the High Elf, you get Misty Step, so that's solved for you as well, and a good reason to consider playing a High Elf. But Misty Step is awfully good. It's tough to not grab it. Then there's also something like Spider Climb. Now, Spider Climb is a really good spell, and it also is going to be served very well with Extended. That 1 point would turn it to a 2-hour spell. If you went with 2 points, it's a 4-hour spell. And it's going to be useful all throughout your career. I mean, it's not as good as flying, but it pretty much lets you get into the same kind of places. You just can't use it floating over a battlefield in a kind of way that fly can. But in almost every other practical sense, for exploration purposes or infiltration, Spider Climb is just about as good as flight. In the end, I'm going to say you're probably going to want, I know that people are going to want Misty Step. So if you aren't playing a High Elf, probably take Misty Step. It could be an argument for taking Fey Touched. Let's put it that way. So at level 5, a big level all the time, and you're going to gain Sorceress Restoration and 3rd level spells. Sorceress Restoration, when you take a short rest, you're going to be able to recover half of your sorcerer level in sorcery points that have been expended. You can only do this once per long rest. Very, very nice ability. Of course, you get your 3rd level spells, and you get 3rd level psionic spells For your psionic spells, you gain Hunger of Hadar and Sending. Sending is a good utility spell. It's actually quite good. Hunger of Hadar is a good spell. It's not like rule the world kind of spell, but it's a really effective spell. So Hunger of Hadar is going to create a 20-foot radius area of effect. It's going to create an area of darkness. Now, in that darkness, it doesn't read that it is magical darkness, so anybody that has dark vision will be able to see into it. Anybody that's within that darkness, in that area of effect, is going to have the blinded condition. Now, this is without a saving throw. They're going to take a little bit of cold damage, no saving throw. And the area is difficult terrain, again, no saving throw. So if they're going to try and get out, and they're in the 4 center squares, and if they have a 30-foot movement, it's going to take them their entire movement to get out of Hunger of Hadar. If they have 30 foot of movement, not only is it going to take them their entire movement, they're going to actually have to dash to get out of it if they're in those center 4 squares. So for those whatever targets you can get within the 4 center squares of Hunger of Hadar, what Hunger of Hadar is going to do is basically rob them of a turn, and if they have 30 foot of movement, and they can't do anything about it. Now, if they could fly, that's going to be one problem. If they have some kind of blind sight kind of an ability, that could be a problem. But these are less common. But my point in saying that there's nothing they can do about it is that there's no save to any of those things. So the ability to just rob the enormous amount of creatures that you're going to face that you can get within that center 4 squares, to just automatically rob them of 1 round of action is an immensely powerful thing. And that's really what the power of Hunger of Hadar is. It's secondary power. Now, when I say rob them of their turn, that's assuming that they are going to get out, that they want to get out. They're willing to spend a turn to get out of it. If they stay there, anybody that's got dark vision is going to have advantage on them because they have the blinded condition. They're going to be taking extra damage at the end of the round. They're going to be taking damage again when the beginning of the round comes up. They're going to be well motivated to want to use that dash action to get out. Now, of course, again, this is assuming 30 feet of movement. With other creatures, it's not going to be that slam dunk of a thing. But you will see what I'm saying in that while they may not have to spend their dash action to get completely out of it, by the time they do get out of it with extra movement, if they have a higher movement rate, they're going to be sitting on that edge. Very, very likely, because it's difficult terrain. So, of course, if you have telekinetic as a bonus action, you're going to be able to just kick them right back in there. So, an effective spell. It is, and it's a cool atmospheric kind of spell, of course. Very thematic spell. Very, very cool. Is it a hypnotic pattern? No, it's not a hypnotic pattern. Not by quite a long shot. But it has something over hypnotic pattern in that its effects, no saves. That's really big. That's a really big deal. So now for the 2 spells that you get here at level 3, I'm going to suggest that you take Fireball and that you take Counterspell. Now here's the reason why. You are going to be coming at a point where as you start advancing in levels, you're going to, and I'm not talking about like way down the road, I'm talking about like immediately, like at level 7, there's going to be a point in time where having the ability to cast a non-concentration big damage spell is going to be really useful. So I would recommend that you take it with a 3rd level spell slot with Fireball. Obviously, taking something like Hypnotic Pattern would almost be counterproductive with having Hunger of Hadar, and you'll see why I would make it to level 6 once again. Okay, at level 6, this is where you go boom. You get Psionic Sorcery. So with Psionic Sorcery, you are now able to cast anything from your Psionic spell list, only the spells on your Psionic spell list. You can cast them normally with a spell slot, or you can cast them with sorcery points. If you cast them with sorcery points, they require no verbal or somatic component, and they don't require a material component if that material component is not consumed or doesn't have a specified cost. So it's important to note that with Detect Thoughts, even though it does have a material component, it isn't being consumed and it's a copper piece. So there's going to be very little reason. It's going to be pretty hard, I think, for a DM to justify that that's going to tip off that you're casting a spell. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have, you're not doing any of the verbal or somatic stuff. If I were DMing, I would certainly rule that they would not know. But those points are really just the frosting in this scenario. The cake is this, that you are able to cast the spells at a cost equal to the spell's level in sorcery points. I can't emphasize this enough. This is the mechanic. This is it. It is equal to whatever you could sack a spell for. You could then use those points and immediately buy the equivalent spell slot for whatever is on your psionic spell list. So if you had a second level slot and a first level slot, you could sack both of those, get 3 points, and burn them in to Hunger of Hadar. So all of your spells now become a pool. I coined the term the battery. That's what it is, the battery. And with this battery, even from now on, you're going to start being able to cast in a way that nobody else can. So let's just think about it for a quick second here. We're level 6. That means you have 6 sorcery points. You're going to be able to, at a short rest, gain 3 more. I'm worried about your total amount of sorcery points in a day. So that's 9. You're going to have, at 6th level, you're going to have 3 third level slots. That's 9. So we're at 18. Then you're going to have 3 second level slots. That's another 6. That's 24. And then with another 4 from your 4 first level slots, and then with another 4 from your 4 first level slots, you're going to be at 28. Which means, folks, that if you wanted to, in a day, you could cast Hunger of Hadar 9 times and have 1 point left over to cast a first level spell or just have a first level spell slot left over. 9 castings of your highest level spell at this level, third level spell. Nobody else in the game can do that. And it's this kind of power that's going to keep marching up in our 4th level spells and into our 5th level spells. And it's at that point where you really get to be atomic. But the 7th level option, the 4th level spell slot option, is going to be awfully good too. So no, Hunger of Hadar is not Hypnotic Pattern. But you're going to be able to just keep dropping it. I mean, if my averages are correct, so you have 3 combats in a day, about 4 rounds each. That's about 12 rounds of combat total in a day. And if you're able to cast Hunger of Hadar 9 times, that's 9 out of those 12 rounds that you could be casting it. And why would you want to? Well, because it could be, obviously you're never going to want to cast it that many times. But you'll be able to, in certain combats, just drop the Hunger of Hadar you had just cast, and wherever they have gone to, drop it on them again. At that point, you almost don't even need to be thinking about it in terms of, like, is it optimal for how many characters I'm going to be able to, or how many targets I'm going to get. It could just be, I'm just going to keep denying you actions. And you're just going to have to suffer with it. So it's immensely powerful. Hunger of Hadar is just the beginning. This is not the best, greatest use of your psionic sorcery. We're going to get there very shortly. Level 7 is very good. And that's the very next level. So you've got this with Hunger of Hadar as soon as you get with psionic sorcery. And then at level 7, it's going to get even better. But let's just stop and think for a second in those days where you're in town. Okay? So we just said you have 28 total sorcery points in a day. And you are in town. You're not expecting any combat. If you wanted to, you could be casting Detect Thoughts 14 times. 14 times in a day. Do you see what I mean now with being able to trivialize things that are going on in the outside world in social situations with Detect Thoughts? If you can just keep there, what's a DM to do? It's really a nightmare. You are in a social situation, you are definitely a nightmare. You're becoming a combat nightmare. You're going to get there at level 7 and then at level 9. It's a freak show. So if you were to blend these things, then you have Hunger of Hadar that you could be dropping. You could then be dropping a fire. You could start with Fireball and then drop Hunger of Hadar, or do one after the other, or just keep dropping Hunger of Hadar. But that's why I would like to have Fireball as an option. And of course, there's going to be combat scenarios where you're going to want to simply just do more damage and not just keep dropping Hunger of Hadar over and over and over again. So having that straight damage option is nice for Fireball. And, you could say it's Pyrokinesis. At level 7, we get our 4th level spells and we get Sorcery Incarnate. Now with Sorcery Incarnate, you're going to be able to spend 2 sorcery points to be able to buy another innate sorcery. That's great. And then you'll also, while that's active, be able to have 2 Metamagics on any given spell. I think you can see now, after I've described the battery, why you don't want to be burning sorcery points on anything else than the battery itself. There's very little argument that could be made that any Metamagic is going to beat being able to just spend that many sorcery points to get a spell slot of that level. And the math already bears this out. Your casting potential for the things you want when you want them is immense. Now, granted, it's a very narrow set of spells, but you also have some utility in there. You've got really nice use with sending. You've got really nice use with the detect thoughts. Is that going to cover everything? No, of course not. But you also do have a really nice combat option. And of course, now you get more. You're going to get on the Psionic spell list Everard's Black Tentacles and Summon Aberration. Now, Summon Aberration is not a spell that I'm a huge fan of, but it is on your spell list, and there's going to be times you're going to want to make use of it. It lasts for an hour. So this is another spell that could really benefit from use of extended spell. If you did use an extended spell for Summon Aberration, I would go with the Slod. Actually, none of the 3 really excite me all that much, but the Slod has regeneration that's going to every round it's going to regenerate 5 hit points as long as it has a hit point. So its ability to survive and be able to carry forward in several encounters, that may be worth spending an extra point on it. And of course, that would also grant you, again, having advantage on that concentration save. So let me just address that real point. I don't want to spend a lot of time on extend, but it's that idea where if the spell that you're casting through your psionic sorcery is a spell that you would end up having to cast twice, but because it's a duration spell like Summon Aberration, and by spending 1 point, you can basically get 2 castings out of it by gaining that immense amount of extra time, in this case a whole other hour, it may be worth it to have extended sorcery and spend that sorcery point on that. It's certainly economically way better than spending 8 points. You're spending 5. And by doing that, if you were wanting to do something like Quickened or some other Metamagic that I didn't mention, then that's going to allow you to economize and be able to get those spells to last a little bit longer. And again, Slod will feed into that as well by regenerating to free you up to use some Metamagics for actual Metamagic. But in general, the spell I'm going to be talking to you about here, the one that is now going to replace Hunger of Hadar largely, is Everard's Black Tentacles. Everard's Black Tentacles, just think of it as a improved form of Entangle. Now, it's an improved form of Entangle in a couple of ways. One is that on that failed save, there's going to be some damage done. The damage is not spectacular, but it is damage. But the improved form is that not only is the area affected is the same as Entangle, it maintains to be difficult terrain throughout. That's true with Entangle as well. But unlike Entangle, the tentacles that are active stay active throughout the duration of the spell. So if anybody comes in or out, they're going to have to make that saving throw. Entangle is a one-shot affair. When the spell is cast, that happens, and then whoever failed their save, you deal with it from there. But it is not a persistent effect. So if if you cast Ever's Black Tentacles, again, like Hunger of Hadar, if they do escape from it, you're going to have the option via telekinetic or another push effect from somebody else to push them back into Ever's Black Tentacles. If they fail that save, they're going to take that 3d6 of damage, and they're going to be restrained. And of course, that's the big deal here. Now, if they want to try and break that, they can. So this is kind of a weird thing here. So they failed their save, and they're in that situation. They don't automatically get another saving throw, but they kind of do. But if they do, they have to use their action to do it. And it's not strictly a save. It's a strength or athletics check against your save DC. But it's the ability then to have them have to spend that action to be able to earn the right to even have a chance to make that save. So in that sense, it's kind of like Hunger of Hadar, because if they did fail the initial save to break free, they're going to have to lose an action. I would argue that between the two, I prefer Ever's Black Tentacles, but meaning I think it's just slightly better than Hunger of Hadar, but it's also going to cost one more point to cast than Hunger of Hadar. So you're going to want to mix and match these two. If Hunger of Hadar will do, then that's what you should cast. If you would prefer Ever's Black Tentacles, then use that. And then, of course, if you want to be really economical altogether, you go with Summon Aberration, and you could cast one of the other two, but I would go with the slot and I would extend it. If I were doing that, that means I'm going to be wanting to use my slots to be using on something like Fireball or other spells not on the Psionic spell list. But I want to be playing off of the battery, the Psionic spell list with Psionic Sorcery, the battery, as much as I possibly can. For our regular spells, of course, we take Polymorph, of course, and we take Dimension Door. But it should be noted here, again, I want to talk about the power of the battery here. So whether we're talking about Summon Aberration or we're talking about Ever's Black Tentacles, you have 7 sorcery points now from your level. You would get 3 more at a short rest, so that's 10. You have 19 sorcery points available from your previous level spells, and you have 1 4th level spell slot. So you have 29 points and 1 4th level spell slot. That means that you could be casting a 4th level spell 8 times in a day. Now, you can't cast Polymorph 8 times a day, but you'll be able to do Summon Aberration. You'll be able to do Ever's Black Tentacles 8 times in a day. Crazy. And of course, this is all mix and match. I mean, that's just if you're going to want to just use the maximum spell slot available. That's how potent that ability is. It just looks like a minor savings, but it turns out to be this crazy fuel, this engine, this battery that just creates this ability to cast like nobody else in the game can. In the 2014 rules, you were able to mix and match the spells, so this was a little bit more impressive because you were able to squeeze some slightly better spells in there. But these are still good spells. So at level 8, we get our ASI, and we're going, of course, getting Charisma to 20. We get our second 4th level spell slot, which is very, very nice. And with that slot, I would take Arcane Eye. Arcane Eye is just an amazingly good spell. You don't get Scrying on your Sorcerer spell list, and you don't get it on the Psionic spell list. So having something like Arcane Eye, very, very, very effective, very useful. And at level 9. So level 9 is where you have now hit it and everything kind of like it suddenly starts becoming almost game over. Because your Psionic spell list, you get your 5th level spell slots. You now gain Rary's Telepathic Bond, which is a very nice spell, but you get Telekinesis. Now, Telekinesis is not as good, in my opinion, as Big B's Hand, but it's really good. And it lasts 10 minutes, so it's economical. If you're in a dungeon, that one casting of it could last for 2 encounters. But like Big B's, you're able to just kind of like do a lot of different things with Telekinesis. And this is where I would just be having Telekinesis running and casting it all the time and then casting Fireball. Now, for your regular spell, you could easily take Synaptic Static here. The sad part was you were able to squeeze this into the actual battery before. But you could still take it normally, and it could still operate just about the same. But because you only have this one 5th level slot here at 9th level, you're only going to be able to Synaptic Static once in a day. That is, unless you want to buy a 5th level slot at a very high price. But I would take Synaptic Static for that reason. The only other one I would really be considering here at this level would be something like Wall of Stone, simply because you don't have a wall spell at all. So here at 9th level, you got 4 first level spell slots, 3 second, 3 third, 3 fourth, and 1 fifth. You've got 9 basic sorcery points and 4 more, so you've got 13 from Restoration. That means if you sacked all of your spell slots, you would have 49 points available to you in that day. That is 9 castings of a 5th level spell and 1 casting of a 4th level spell in a day. And of course, you can be mixing and matching all of this. But my point is that you are able to throw such volume of high-end magic at the enemy at will that the battery is just immensely powerful. Again, it is backed up a little bit from the 2014 rules, but it's still awfully powerful. And if you really had to reach out and grab to go buy an expensive spell slot for something like Synaptic Static or Fireball or whatever you wanted to go buy, you certainly could, because you're probably never going to need to cast all of these at that kind of volume all the time. But you were able to if you need to. And at 10th level here, you get Metamagic, so you get 2 more Metamagic options, and of course you get another 5th level spell slot. So that actually nets you 7 more sorcery points for the day. So you're now at 56 sorcery points. So Aberrant Mind definitely took a little bit of a hit, as I've said several times throughout this, but don't be too worried about it. It's still crazy good. It can still do something that nobody else can do. And it's that ability and to be able to just cause that kind of havoc at will and nothing can really stop you is really, really fun. All right. Well, that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.